Marx's profound and clear progressive ideas, along with his strategy of uniting intermediate forces to establish a united front, won over the newspaper's shareholders. In October, he was formally appointed as editor-in-chief and promptly relocated to Cologne, where the Rhine Gazette was based. Marx played a central role in the newspaper, so much so that press censors referred to the paper as Marx's personal dictatorship. The publication shifted its focus away from the religious issues favored by the young Hegelians and their critiques of moderate liberals, concentrating instead on practical issues of interest to all parties and major social problems. This inevitably aroused strong dissatisfaction within the Prussian government. The newspaper's subscription numbers grew rapidly. When Marx took over as editor in October, there were only 800 subscribers. By November 10, the number had risen to 1,800, and by the end of December, it had soared to 3,400. Contributor Robert Prutz wrote, "All the young geniuses in Prussia and Germany with fresh ideas of freedom or revolution have gathered here seeking refuge. They fight with every kind of weapon, united for a common goal, and the struggles of the press censors and police against them are futile." Shareholder Mebison described Marx thus: "This 24-year-old man from Trier was full of energy, with thick, vibrant hair covering his cheeks, arms, nose, and ears. He was imperious, impulsive, passionate, supremely self-assured, yet also rigorous and erudite, a tireless debater, with a deep, incisive acuity characteristic of his Jewish heritage. He pursued every tenet of young Hegelian philosophy to its ultimate conclusion. Through concentrated study of economics, he was at that time already beginning to move towards communism." Marx's first majorask upon taking up his post was to counter accusations by the Allgemeine Zeitung that the Rhine Gazette was promoting communism. In an article from October, he wrote, "The Rhine Gazette does not even acknowledge the theoretical reality of communism in current form, much less expect its practical implementation. However, the profound works of Leroux, Conceit, Arendt, and particularly Proudhon, cannot be superficially dismissed through hasty imaginings. They demand sustained, in-depth study. Communism has become a crucially important practical issue in France and Britain today. The phenomenon of the proletariat demanding possession of a portion of the property held by the middle classes is a visible fact on the streets of Manchester, Paris, and Lyon. We firmly believe that the true danger lies not in the practical experiments of communism, but in its theoretical foundation, for dangerous practical experiments elicit cannon fire as a response. Ideas that possess our consciousness dictate our convictions, to which our conscience is bound through reason. This is a shackle one cannot break without tearing one's heart apart. It is simultaneously a devil whom one can only overcome by submitting to it." Naturally, the Allgemeine Zeitung has never experienced this torment of conscience, which arises when one's personal wishes rebel against the objective insights of one's own reason, for it possesses neither its own reason, nor its own insights, nor its own conscience. It is clear that in October 1842 Marx was still unfamiliar with communism, viewing it with curiosity and sympathy, not yet seeing the proletariat as the hope for revolution and progress, but merely as victims of society. In early October, just as Marx was about to be formally appointed editor of the Rhine Gazette, Engels completed his one-year military service in Berlin. On his way back to Barmen, he visited the newspaper's editorial office in Cologne. However, Marx was still residing in Trier at the time, so Engels only met Rutenberg and Hess. Hess recalled, "When this seasoned revolutionary bid me farewell, he had already become an ardent communist." Although Hess exaggerated his own influence, he undeniably played a role in pushing Engels towards communism. Engels later writing a year later, as early as the autumn of 1842. Some party activists had already concluded that political changes alone were insufficient, and declared that only a social revolution based on collective ownership could establish a society conforming to their abstract principles. Yet, even party leaders like Bruno Bauer, Feuerbach, and Rouge had not then been prepared to take this decisive step. The party's political journal, the Rhine Gazette, published several articles defending communism, but they failed to achieve the expected effect. Yet communism is the necessary consequence of Hegelian philosophy, and no resistance can halt its development. Under the influence of the British workers' movement, Engels soon transcended Hess' utopian communist position. In October, Engels wrote Frederick William IV, King of Prussia. In it, he pointed out that William IV was a product of his era, embodying the final struggle of the Prussian state principle pushed to its extreme. Contradictions and instability permeated both the king and his system. To realize his vision of a legitimist and Christian state, he attempted to infuse a rationalist bureaucracy that was already largely irreligious with Christian ideology. He drafted laws based on Christian precepts, yet demanded church subservience to the monarchy. He reaped the benefits of the anti-feudal reforms of 1807 to 1812, which had destroyed the old medieval feudal hierarchy and strengthened monarchical absolutism, yet simultaneously sought to bolster remnants of feudalism, guilds, and privileged orders, exploiting the conflicts between these groups to maintain his own authority. He viewed the fragmented Protestant sects as similar guilds. He understood the need to concede to the historical tendency of liberalism, but his concessions only increased the privileges of these elite groups. He refused to acknowledge any universal, civic, or human rights. Engels argued that if the people won freedom of speech, within a year they would inevitably demand a constitution, leading to representative government and subsequently triggering a chain reaction, including breaking the alliance with Russia, among other consequences. Prussia's current situation bore many similarities to pre-revolutionary France. By directly criticizing the king, the Prussian system, and predicting a French-style revolution, Engels' article already